We didn't go into any real detail about dialogue earlier, because honestly it's something that's best learned by doing. In many ways, dialogue appears to be the easiest part of the screenplay to write, but is arguably the hardest element to do well, because it's difficult to put our finger on the difference between good and great dialogue. The core tools that we're going to use to improve our dialogue are: number 1, making it true to the character; number 2, show don't tell; number 3, avoid being on the nose; and number 4, creating subtext. Number 1, making it true to the character. Now, easy as it sounds, dialogue needs to sound distinct to this and only this character. One way to check if we're succeeding is to give a section of the script to a reader and delete the names and character descriptions, replacing them just with character 1, character 2, etc. And at the end, ask them to describe those characters from the dialogue. How close are they to the way we wrote them? In my own experience, honestly, people ended up describing someone very similar to me. Because every line can be said in so many ways. Are you writing it the way you would say it, or the way this character would say it? Let's try an example. A car loses control and careens into the front of a movie theatre. Our character runs into a police precinct across the street to alert the police to what's going on outside. That's the setup. Now let's see how different characters might get to the same goal through their choice of dialogue. So here's the list of potential characters. Number 1, you. What would you say? Number 2, a 10-year-old child. Number 3, another policeman. Number 4, a criminal who's in on the crash, who's trying to clear the precinct to break someone out who's inside. Number 5, a tourist who speaks only a little English. Number 6, an illegal immigrant who speaks a lot of English but fears deportation. And number 7, the mayor of the city. Go and try it out. Because we are now concentrating so hard, we might actually find it more difficult than we usually would to put words into the characters' mouths. That's because most of the time we're really giving them a slightly amended version of our own words. But by writing that down first, we drive ourselves to create something different. This is where acting or acting classes of any sort can be very useful to writers when creating characters. If you haven't done any, I suggest you enroll yourself as soon as possible. When we finish a scene, go back and read through the whole piece in each of the characters' voices. Does it sound correct? Does it sound like what that character would say? If they have an accent, put it on as you say it. Every word can sound totally different with an accent, and the emphasis of an accent can dramatically change the flow of a line. The second part of true dialogue is making sure it's honest. Now again, this sounds easy, and it is easy, until we write a line we really like. Oh, the dread of writing a great line of dialogue. Why is it so terrible? Because we will fall in love with that line and want to hold on to it no matter how little it fits the character, the scene, or the story. If it's truly honest to the character, scene, and story, then we've written a line that might be quoted for years to come. Here are some great movie lines that, as I say, were honest to the character, scene, and story.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Say hello to my little friend!
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
You can't handle the truth!
60% of the time, it works every time.
Excuse me?
Now, there's a reason we remember these moments and quote them for generations. They are moments when everything came together perfectly. In many cases, I bet the writer themselves never imagined they'd have quite the effect they did. I bet many of them weren't even the writer's favourite line in the script. But when we do write something we truly love, we want to keep it at all costs. But we can't. We have to lose lines we love if they're not honest to the character. I've written a line I thought was truly great, but knowing that it didn't fit the character at that moment, I then tried to rewrite the whole scene around that line. in some cases making heroes into villains and shifting entire structural elements around so that the line can stay. It doesn't work. If the line is not honest to the character, then no amount of rewriting is going to change that. The line must go. Don't delete it forever. Keep it somewhere, perhaps in a Word document of truly great lines. You never know, it might fit somewhere else, or it may never appear in any one of your scripts. Hey, at least we wrote a great line. Better to have undiscovered gems than never come up with any gems at all. But this idea of dishonest dialogue links to our earlier video about logic problems in our screenplay. It's the same issue. It's making characters say things we want them to say rather than what that character would say in that moment. Number 2, show don't tell. Frankly, does the line need to be there at all? Film is a visual medium, and as such, we want to show our audience what is going on. To take it to its epitome, we can show the audience a huge amount without saying anything at all. A good example of this is I love you. Lots of characters will fall in love during the writing of our many screenplays, but we almost never want them to say I love you. Think back over the myriad of wonderful movies about love and romance. How many times does a character actually say I love you? Great writers find many ways of showing characters falling in love without any words at all. Amy dances with the Knicks cheerleaders in Trainwreck. Vivian kisses Edward on the mouth in Pretty Woman. Becca watches The Breakfast Club in Pitch Perfect. Mark buys Bridget a new diary in Bridget Jones's Diary. These are all moments that say I love you and express it deeper than the actual words ever could. A scene that does this impeccably is from the wonderful teen comedy Bring It On by Jessica Bendinger. Head cheerleader Torrance is staying at the house of a friend. The friend's brother Cliff and Torrance have a crush on each other that so far has been noticeably unspoken. Let's see what happens. That is one of the most sexual scenes you will ever see. The attraction between them that was so far unspoken is now loud and clear, but no one got naked and not one word was spoken. Instead, it was about brushing their teeth. It is a masterclass of show don't tell. Number 3, avoid being on the nose. Now, you may have heard this phrase elsewhere. What it means is dialogue that is too honest, too blunt. We very rarely say exactly what we were thinking, even to the ones closest to us. So on-the-nose dialogue is when people say what they should be thinking, but not saying. We need our characters to say a huge amount in as few words as possible. So instead of, "Oh shit, I just saw the shark and it's huge, way bigger than we thought it was, geez, there's no way we're gonna catch that thing. We should just go home and forget it. We're all as good as dead if we keep going." Instead we get,
"You're gonna need a bigger boat."
And instead of, "That's a mistake. I'm much stronger than you think, plus I'm a cyborg, so I wouldn't disrespect me if I were you. This is not the last you'll see of me, I promise, and when I return, I'm gonna be pissed." We get,
"I'll be back."
Now look, these are two of the most memorable, most quoted lines in movie history, so let's not put that kind of pressure on ourselves to be that good all the time, but let's go back through our first draft and look at every line. Is there a more subtle, less blunt, and maybe shorter way of saying it? Number 4, creating subtext. Great dialogue is all about the subtext or hidden meaning of what our characters are actually saying. Let's go back to I love you for a moment. Even if they do use words, great writers find different words to say it.
As you wish. Ditto.
You had me at hello.
You make me want to be a better man.
The subtext is what we learn behind the words. It's what they're saying without really saying it. Now, sometimes this comes out as a conversation about one thing when they're really talking about something else. A wonderful example of this comes from Pretty Woman. Vivian has left, never to see Edward again. Edward is leaving the hotel to return to New York. He stops by the front desk to check out and asks Barnard Thompson, the hotel manager, to return the diamond necklace that he borrowed for their date to the opera.
One last thing. If you could possibly return this to Fred's for me, please.
Yes, of course.
May I, sir? Of course, please.
It must be difficult to let go of something so beautiful.
Now, they're not talking about the necklace, but if the hotel manager simply walked up to Edward Lewis and said the exact same thing about Vivian, it would be crass and on the nose. By using the necklace as a metaphor, they can say out loud what Edward and the audience are all thinking. So the paradox of dialogue, therefore, is some of the best dialogue is cut and never put back, because we find a more visual, more honest way to express what the person is thinking. Go back and look at all your dialogue and ask the following questions. Is it necessary? Is there a more visual way of saying the same thing? If it is necessary, is there a more subtle, interesting, or subtextual way of saying it?